Okay, so we're now ready to start our second distinguished lecture of for the day. I'm extremely glad to have with us Dr. Alon Halevy, who is an old friend and colleague. So Alon is a distinguished engineer in Google Cloud. He's been a director at Meta's Reality Labs research in the past, working on personal digital data. He's been the CEO of Megagon Labs. He's led the structured data group in Google Research, and even before that, he was a professor at the University of Washington. He's a distinguished scientist, has won several awards, and he's also the founder of two startups, one of which was acquired by Google. So without further ado, I give the floor to Alon, who's going to talk to us today about AI and well-being. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. How do I? Oh, I see myself here. Okay. How do I move? Good. This works. Good. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for giving me a reason to come to Paris. Always lovely. So today I'm going to be talking about AI and well-being. And the idea is very simple. So today we have many applications that purport to somehow improve our well-being in some way, right? I mean, you have apps for exercise, you have apps for learning, apps for meditation, for sleep, I have this Oura ring that tells me how I slept. So we have a lot of apps, okay? We also are collecting much more personal data about ourselves. Everything we do, a lot of the things that we do are being recorded digitally somewhere in the cloud, whether stay here. Okay. I'm supposed to get steps by giving a talk. So a lot of the data that we're collecting, a lot of things that we do, like the movies we watch and the books we read and where we visit, where everything is being recorded, right? So there's so much data about us that you can imagine we can do much more with this. Now with the new wave of AI, of language models and chatbots and the stuff, and the fact that you can actually talk to an AI and get advice and tell about yourself, this is a huge revolution, right? So the promise is that with all these advancements, right, we should be able to really improve our well-being. But if you look at what we have today, is we have a disconnected collection of apps, and our well-being hasn't really improved in any way. That's what I'm going to bring. Is it a problem? Okay. So hold it. Good. Okay. So today what I'm going to be talking about is, can we really use AI to improve our well-being in a significant way? Okay. Now, before I do that, I want to throw it to you. So well-being is a very complicated topic. What does well-being mean to you? When you think about well-being, what comes to mind? I'm taking a break here.
Happiness.
Happiness. Is that a synonym of well-being, or is that
No, it's part of, maybe part of.
Okay. I would ask you to define happiness. What does happiness mean for you? Okay. I like that.
Maybe no stress, for example.
No stress.
And so you have some biological variable that can give you stress. Biological definition.
Okay.
Well-being. But it is a contrary definition that we define that what is stress. It's a contrary well-being.
Identification. Okay,
Please.
Access to healthcare, access to good schools and good food places is part of the well-being.
all.
Convenience of life. Convenience.
Give me an example.
Lots of work and maybe robots to help us to do.
Okay. Anybody else? Peace. Huh? Peace. Peace. I like that. Peace between.
Sometimes like suppose I'm not getting my results, so okay, and I'm not able to push weights. Sometimes okay, for reasons. And I probably cannot put weight, I can push weights.
Okay.
These
So if I'm not trying to overachieve, giving yourself a little bit of break. Okay, so I can spend a whole hour talking about this, but I should get to my talk. But what you're seeing here is that well-being means a lot of things, and it's really complicated. Okay, and it's so complicated that maybe we can't imagine an AI app or a single AI app that will actually take care of all aspects of well-being. So this piece of art here that I paid for in a previous job of mine was trying to, it looks a little bit like Maslow's pyramid of needs, but it's prettier, okay? Because I paid an artist to do this. And this is Melissa lecturer. And so, I mean, well-being has different aspects. One is your basic physical safety. You're not hungry. You're eating. You're exercising. You're sleeping well, so your body is actually ready to do what it needs to make you happy, well-being, right? The other is it starts getting into more of the mind, right? Meditation. The fact that you can be present. The fact that you can actually focus on what you need to do. You're not sitting here and worrying about 10,000 other things that are going on. You can actually listen and pay attention to the people you're with, right? Part of this is spiritual, part of this is, forgiveness and gratitude. And then comes the hardest part. The most challenging part is finding meaning, right? So if you're doing just fine in life, right? But then the question is, why am I here? And my 19-year-old son asks me all the time, why am I here? I'm like, just go to college. Like, so the question is, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I, when I go to work, why am I doing it? What am I trying to achieve? So the point of this slide is well-being is a very complicated thing, and it's not going to be solved by a simple app. But so what I'm going to be talking about, what I'm going to be arguing today, is that some of my talk. First of all, my talk is not based on anything I do at Google right now. Okay, I work at Google Cloud. We do amazing things. This has nothing to do with this. Okay, so whatever I say here, I'm hoping not to get fired from my job. These what I'm going to talk about is a proposal for a well-being operating system. So the argument is that today we have apps that are trying to address different aspects of our well-being. And if you think about this, then it's a little reminiscent of the days when we used to write programs directly to hardware, right? So you're all too young in this room to remember that. In fact, I'm too young to remember that, but I know people who did it. So the point is that we were, every time we wrote a program, we actually wrote commands on the hardware, which meant that every program occupied the hardware because you couldn't run two programs on the hardware. We couldn't take a program that works on one hardware and make it work on another hardware. Okay, so it was very so here the hardware is the human body, and essentially what you're doing is we have apps that are working on different aspects of the human body. Okay, now as computer scientists, we came up with this beautiful abstraction called operating systems. Operating systems are like a set of abstractions, right? You have files, you have network, you have memory, you have all these things, right? And so now all you need to do is you need to think about these abstractions that are translated differently depending on the hardware that you have. Okay, so writing programs is easier. Multiple programs can run on the same computer. So operating systems gave us this amazing thing. AI today, everybody forgets about that because they're operating systems sort of take them for granted. But they're actually quite an amazing invention. So this is where the analogy stops. So I'm going to try to identify components of well-being or components that application builders need to know about, need to have, in order to be able to write apps for well-being in a much more principled fashion. Okay, what is the operating system of well-being? Okay, so that's what that's sort of the idea of the talk. Now, this is part of I'm basing this on a book that I'm writing called Designing AI for Well-being, but the book title might actually be different, something like The AI Partner. I have no idea what the title is yet, but there's a book. Okay, so I'll be talking about the well-being operating system, and then I'll talk about some specific data science challenges that we need to address in order to make this happen. Okay, and again, I'm going to ask a lot of questions, and I don't know the answers for them, and I'm going to express a lot of opinions that are mine, not any of my employers, not the past, or none that I know of. Okay, and if you have any questions throughout the talk, please stop me. Okay, so the question of this operator, I don't want you to take the analogy to the operating system too literally. Okay, for two reasons. One is operating systems sort of inspire this idea, and second, if you ask me very detailed questions about operating systems, I'm running out of the tool. I don't know much about operating systems. Okay, I know about the basic ideas, but so think of this as more of an inspirational way of thinking about building AI for well-being. What are the components that every app for well-being needs to know about, and that we need to build across these apps? Okay, and we gave it a name. It's called Oswell. Oswell is OS, operating system, well for well-being. Oswell, it might not stick. The other problem with Oswell, it sounds a little bit like Orwell. So 1984, Big Brother, stuff like that. Not good, right? But it's a coincidence that it may be a lucky coincidence. Maybe we'll let it go. Okay, so this is the answer. Okay, in this operating system, we believe that there are three components that we need to build, and that every app for well-being needs to contribute to. Okay, now let me make one other thing clear. I'm going to be talking in two different ways. I'm going to be talking about collections of apps writing against this operating system. That's one possibility. That's probably the shorter term possibility for what's going to happen. But the real vision is that you have one app, okay, that talks to many other experts and does all kinds of things. But you have one AI partner that you talk to throughout the day, and that AI partner will know everything about your well-being and help you in ways that will make your life better. Okay, so that's what I would like to see. There are obviously problems with that I'll get to in a moment. Okay. Oh, okay. So I need to talk about this. Okay, so these are the three components. So the first component is your experiences. This is where databases come in. Okay, the experiences is a database of everything you've done in life that is possibly recorded in a computer. Okay, so today you record a lot of what you're doing. I go around Paris, I take pictures, I eat, I pay with my credit card, I take photos of everything I eat too. Everything is recorded. Okay, so you can actually reconstruct my trip to Paris and what I did before Paris quite accurately just from digital breadcrumbs. Okay, so this database of experience that we call a life log is a series of episodes. I'll talk about this much more in a moment, but it's basically your past. Okay, but it's also your future. It's also, what do you want to do? Okay, what do you want to learn? Where do you want to be in 5 years from now? What are your aspirations? What mountains do you want to climb? What countries do you want to visit? Okay, so knowing what you may want to do is also important for an AI app that is going to be your well-being partner, right? It should help you get to where you are. So it's mostly your past, but it's also your aspirations for the future. It's also your to-do list. Okay, it's like what do you need to do tomorrow so you can schedule these things more efficiently. The second is attention. Okay, your life is your attention. Essentially, what you're paying attention to is what determines your subjective experience of your time, right? So you can be sitting on the top of a beautiful mountain and with a beautiful view, but if you're thinking about the fight that you had with your boss, you're not going to have a very good time. Okay, or you can be stuck in traffic, trying to get to the airport, whatever, right? But thinking happy thoughts about the conversation that you had with your children yesterday, like, oh, I don't mind the traffic. Okay, it's what you pay your attention to. So the attention component of this operating system is a set of mechanisms that enable you, that first of all give you recommendations what to spend your attention on. This can be movies, this can be books, this can be what to look at if you're walking around with smart glasses in the street. So it can be anything, right? And it's also we had somebody talk about reduced stress, right? So take care of the details in life for me. I'm planning a trip to Paris. Okay, just go figure everything out for me. I don't want to spend hours and hours just figuring out how I should get there, where I should stay, and stuff like that. You already saw everything I've done in life. Go find me a good deal, okay, or an appropriate plan. So for the attention thing, I like to tell a story that I never told, but it's from a book by Dan Levitin about Jimmy Carter. Okay, Jimmy Carter is some of you are so young that you don't even remember Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was a president of the United States from 1976 to 1980. And the author of the book, Daniel Levitin, he remembers meeting Jimmy Carter when Jimmy was running for president in 1976. And somehow he went to one of his election thingies and he got to talk to Jimmy Carter. And he was blown away by Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was standing and talking to him, and he was paying complete attention to Dan, as if nothing else is going on in the world. He was like in the conversation, okay? And he was like, how can a person who is running for president of the United States be so present in a conversation with one out of 70-something million voters, right? And the answer is very simple. Jimmy Carter had 100 other people taking care of everything he needs to worry about. So when one of those 100 people would come and take Jimmy Carter and say, now you need to move on to the next meeting, Jimmy Carter will do that. So Jimmy Carter didn't have to worry about anything because he knew that his time was being planned to be, to serve whatever goals that he had. So he could be present. He could be sitting there and talking with Daniel Levitin. Why can't each of us be Jimmy Carter? That's the goal. Why can't AI be so good that at any given point, it just takes care of everything else and tells us when to move from one thing to another so we can be present? Okay, I don't know how to do this yet, okay, but I'm hoping people in this room will figure it out and send me a nice email in a few years. Okay, so that's what the attention component of this operating system is. Okay, the third component is connections. Okay, relationships. Everybody knows relationships are complicated, right? Especially as you get to know more and more people all over the world. Some are in your digital world, some are in your physical world, some your close family, some professional, some whatever, some exes, some futures, whatever. Okay, you're constantly struggling to maintain, to make sure that you're doing everything right with these connections, with these relationships. You're trying to help people, so you're trying to be present for the people that you care about, who you care about, right? And when you need help, you want to be able to find the people in your network that will give you the help that you need. Okay, so an important component of Oswell is help me manage my relationships. Okay, it sort of crosses between your experiences and your attention, right? It is partly of attention, but we elevated connections to be a component in itself. And connections are not just between people, it's also between you and the communities that you belong to. Maybe it's your expatriates or your sports fan or your music fans or what have you. So you also have relationships with communities that actually define who you are, and you want to make sure that those relationships are as healthy as can be. Okay, so here's what I want, and literally, I'm so obsessed about building something like this that I'm actually gonna, once I get back to California on Friday, I'm gonna start building this again. Okay, because I think so this is the benefit of procrastination. I've been trying to build a system for a while. Okay, I've actually built a part of the system 2 years ago when I was at Meta. And it took me 3 months of programming to build something I'll show you in a moment. But the more you procrastinate, the easier it is to build stuff, right? So I'm hoping that next Monday, I'll be able to sit down in my terminal and talk to an AI and say, this is what I want to build, just go and do this. Okay, and by afternoon, I'll be done. I dream big, okay? But the point is, programming tools are getting so much better today that you should be able to just like connect a bunch of LLMs and do so. So here's what I want. I want an AI partner that I will just talk to throughout the day. It's like a journal, but it's a journal on steroids. Okay, I just want to tell it what I think. I want to tell it what I've been experiencing. I'll talk to it when it's convenient to me, when I'm in the car, or when I'm I don't know, when I have a few moments, or it will talk to me. I will have lunch with a friend, and then after that, it'll ask me how was the lunch? What do you remember? What do you want to remember from that conversation? So next time you meet this person, you can actually follow up on this thing. Okay, maybe there are things that this friend suggested to me that I want to put on my to-do list, or books that I want to read, or movies that I want to see. So I'm going to talk to this thing, and this thing will not only sort of be a journal, but also extract information from that journal and put it into my to-do list and my calendar and my all the other tools that I use to manage my day. Okay, so it's like an Uber interface to all of my daily information processing tools. So this is what I want. It's going to be an AI partner. It may be a bunch of agents. I don't care. But this is the way I want to build it. And I think you can actually build something like that in especially today. I actually tried this. I actually tried taking my journal. I have a little bit of a journal. Okay, I have a little bit of a journal, and if you give this journal with the right instructions to ChatGPT, for example, it'll actually extract a bunch of to-do items and mentions of people, and it will be able to create a database of connections for you based on stuff that you've talked about. This is all possible. I just need a few hours with an LLM to write some code together. Okay, so let's talk about the first component of the operating system. Any questions so far? Okay. So the first component of this operating system is your experiences. Okay, it's the database of everything digital that is recorded about yourself. Okay, so you have your photos tell a lot about your day. My iWatch knows a lot of stuff about me. Spotify knows stuff. Google Maps knows where I've been trying to navigate to. If I'm wearing smart glasses from my previous employer, the Ray-Bans, it's going to be looking and seeing everything I do. Okay, so this is huge, right? Even my local library, which I borrow digital books from a lot, they give me a spreadsheet of all the books that I read. This is pretty awesome because I forget a lot of them. Okay, so the first component of this is this personal timeline. It's a database that imports all of these digital breadcrumbs and creates a meaningful story of your life. Okay, so this is it's not that huge. Okay, I mean, with all due respect to our rich and exciting lives, it's not that huge of a database, right? But it's very multimodal. It takes in all kinds of interesting signals. So that by itself is already an interesting. That's something that the operating system will use. But you can actually imagine other uses of this, right? You can imagine that you take the database of my life and now you project from it my food preferences or my reading preferences. Okay, so now I go to a restaurant where I don't know anything about the menu, and I just tell my agent, like, you know what I like, look at this menu, figure out what it is that I should eat here. Okay, or give me the top 3 options to make sure you don't recommend anything that I'm going to be allergic to or die from or whatever. So you know everything about my food preferences, right? It might ask me, okay, do you want to eat what you usually eat, or do you want to like try something completely new? And well, depending on my mood, I will tell that. So you can actually imagine these little summaries of yourself, your food preferences, your health preferences, your reading preferences, and these are just like projections of yourself that you can actually use on websites or in daily interactions. Okay. So this is possible to build today. And thank you to Europeans, right? Because of GDPR, now all these providers need to they need to let us download our data, right? So we can go and download this data. They do it in the most ugly way possible. Each one is a pain. It's like a bunch of JSON files that you need to understand, but it's possible. Okay, so I can go to Amazon, download all my purchases. I can go to Spotify, download all my viewing history, and with a little bit manipulation of bits, I can actually create a database of everything that I've done. Okay, now that's the state of the art today. The DMA, the Data Markets Act, is supposed to make it possible for me to read all these things through an API, so I don't need to go and download and all kinds of things. I should just be able to write a program to do this. And with agents that are looking over my or agents that are looking at what I'm doing on my laptop, or glasses that see everything that I do, all these things are going to get much easier, right? I mean, you actually have today research in language models that can look at what you're doing on a screen and just like understand what your intent, but they can actually do it for you. Okay, so this is pretty cool. And someday we'll get to brain-computer interfaces, and all of our minds will be blown away, right? We'll know what we're thinking. We'll know what we're part of what we're thinking. Not clear. Okay, so this is not a new idea. Building a personal timeline. Actually, Gordon Bell and Jim Gemmell had a project in 25 years ago at Microsoft called My Life Bits. They wrote a book about this on how memory revolution will change everything. This book is a beautiful book that tells you that all the things that you can do if you had a perfect memory of your previous life. Okay. For one thing, you never have to argue with your spouse again. You can. It's like every argument, every question has an exact solution, right? Okay. So actually, I did this. So 2 years ago, I told my manager at the time when I was at Meta Reality Labs, I told him, okay, you're not going to hear from me for 3 months. I'm sitting there, I'm writing code. Okay, the guy knew not to mess around with me, and so I sat for 3 months and I wrote code that you can actually it's available on the Facebook research GitHub. The version that you'll see on GitHub has been cleaned up and massively done better from what I originally built. But I actually imported my Google Photos. My Google Photos tell me a lot, right? They tell me a lot about my activities, my trips, where I've been, what I've cooked during the pandemic, awesome stuff, right? My Google Maps navigation tell me where I'm going, my Amazon purchases, my Spotify listening, my iWatch, all my workouts, everything was in there. So I actually looked at this thing and had a reasonable picture of some subset of my life. Okay. So this is an example of visualization of a typical, it was not a typical day, it was a special day, but April 15th, 2019, I was in Vancouver attending a conference. I went for a run in the morning. I pulled a shot of espresso. This is a typical day for me, okay? But then I spent the day at the convention center. So you can actually dive into every day of your life and see stuff. Okay. So you probably you have a lot of questions. Okay, I realize I'm in Europe, which means privacy is an issue. And some of you are ready to get up and walk away. But you're like, what is this guy smoking, right? I want some of this too. So let me give you, I realized what I said was a utopian view of all your data concentrated in one place. What could possibly go wrong, right? That's the way I like to look at it. Okay, so let's address some of these things. The first thing is privacy. Okay, so I'll say this 17 times, and please take it seriously. All this data is stored in a secure way, only available to you by default. There's no compromise on that. Okay. Now we're already storing a lot of our data in cloud services today, right? Your Messenger, your Gmail, your whatever. Okay, there's a lot about you in cloud, and the bottom line is you're putting it there, right? Because living without that would be would be really difficult. But there's something different when you're saying, oh, I'm now going to combine all this data together to really understand your goals in life, right? And that's the scary part, right? This is data integration, and when too much data comes together, it gets scary, right? And I understand that, but I think in general the issues of actually my co-author of the book, she's a privacy expert, so she'll have a great answer for you. But it's more than the technical aspects of privacy. It's more the feeling of privacy, right? So the technical aspects of keeping your data private and behind whatever password and stuff like that, we can achieve that. It's whether you feel that your data is private, right? And that's a very different ballgame. Now, being private is great, but you also want to start sharing, right? Every now and then you want to share. Then the main point here is you will only share. You're not gonna sit there when you start this and answer 100 questions about what you can share with who and whenever, right? You're not going to answer any questions. Okay, everything is private. When you want to share, you will say what you want to share, with whom, for how long, and why. Okay, so if I'm sitting in a restaurant and I don't understand anything on the menu, and I say, share my food preferences with this waiter or waitress for the next 5 minutes, then that information will be shared with them it'll be joined with the menu to get a bunch of recommendations, and that's it. It's not going to be saved anywhere. It's not going to be, they're not going to retain that information. They might say, if you give us your food preferences for the next 30 days, we'll give you a $10 discount on the meal. Like, sure, why not? Now I'm using my own data in order to win-win situation, right? They're getting data and I'm getting a discount. So sharing is done on the spot with clear intention and, instructed in natural language. No doubts there. Okay, so that's about privacy. Now, privacy is only one problem. Okay, privacy is one very important human value, right? And now you can ask about all kinds of other human values that come to bear when you're interacting so closely with an AI. Okay, and a few years ago, I assembled a team. Jonathan Stray and I assembled a team of about 20-something experts from all walks of life. Lawyers and HCI people and psychologists and journalists and policy people and a bunch of AI people from academia, people from a bunch of companies like Google and Meta and Spotify and Microsoft, I think, at the time. And we did this in the context of recommendation systems. Right? So recommendation systems are systems that give you recommendations, whether it's a Facebook stream or Spotify or New York Times gives you, your personal page of news. So all these things that are supposed to give you recommendations out of a big database of possible content, right? So the question that we started asking at the time, which was on the minds of leaders of a lot of these companies, are what are the human values that these systems should be aware of? Because when you're designing a Facebook screen for somebody, right, you're making a choice of a few items out of a huge possible bank of posts, right? And there's you're making these decisions. You need to be aware of why you're making them. Okay, so there was a lot of questions about what are the human values that come to bear in these recommendation systems. So what this team did, and there's a paper that was published earlier this year in a real journal, actually, was what we tried to do was to come up with a list. At least let's get this discussion onto a solid foundation of clearly defined terms. Okay, so we came up with a list of human values that are relevant to recommendation systems. Okay, we tried to make sure that, first of all, we cover everything that we've heard by talking to, we talked to a lot of people, all kinds of cultures and a lot of angles on human values. And then we wanted to make sure that each one of it is actually well defined. Okay, so what happens when you talk about human values is that a lot of people use a lot of words and they actually sometimes mean the same thing, sometimes they mean use the same words and mean different things. So what we tried to do is just like, let's have a clear terminology for this thing. And so we came up with this list of human values. Privacy is one of them. You see that in the corner over there. And but all of these values, they're relevant to recommendation system, but they're also relevant to like just building AI systems that interact with humans and try to help us. Okay, so like you want to make sure that you have enough control over the AI system. You want to make sure that you have agency about your own life, that you're not giving too much agency to the system. So if you have a bunch of values that have to do with like personal values, you have values that are more problematic that have to do with community. Trade-off between personal needs and community needs. That's whenever it gets those are the cases where it gets apart, right? So everybody wants freedom of expression, for example, okay, but freedom of expression can conflict with the value of safety, right? So if you say whatever you want on social media, other people won't feel safe. So safety is obviously a human value. Freedom of expression is a human value. And there are a bunch of people in a bunch of companies who spend all of their working hours trying to figure out the nuances of when to allow this and when to allow that. And of course, people who come and blow up social media and they don't care, right? So these are I mean, if you thought AI is hard, ethics, which is basically what's going on here, is like way harder, okay? Humanity has been working on it for thousands of years and we haven't figured it out. What I'm trying to say here, except that you should go and read this beautiful 70-page paper. It goes really fast, okay? It's like it's bedtime reading. Is all of these values should be considered when you talk about AI for well-being, okay? How am I doing on time? Okay. 10 more minutes? Okay. Good. Yeah, this at the end of the day, you don't want too much technical stuff, right? So I think you're already getting the main ideas. So I was talking about in the timeline, I think we're recording all the digital data, right? And photos, my Spotify, and whatever. This is all objective data. This is stuff that really happened. At least it's recorded as really happened, right? An important aspect of your personal timeline is also the subjective data. Okay, you had lunch with a person, you had a beautiful dish that you took a photo of, but what did you feel about that lunch? What did you talk about in that lunch that you want to remember? Or how did you come out feeling? Do you want to meet this person again? Do you want to meet this person again next week or maybe next year? What did you feel? So how do we capture these subjective experiences that we go through our lives in a reasonable way? Now, the way we do this today is journaling. Okay, we sit down and write journals. In fact, nobody writes journals. 5% of people write journals, and that's not a lot, right? But I think what we have now is with LLMs, we actually have an opportunity where an AI can actually start asking us questions about our day in a way that is engaging, that we feel that it actually adds something to our ability to reflect on our day. And we know that since the AI is asking it, it's going to remember, and so in the future, it'll be able to like recall experiences that we've had and actually make our lives better. So I think using AI for some kind of journaling is going to be an awesome direction in the future. And we sort of had a CHI paper earlier this year that started touching on this. There's a beautiful story if you want. I've been talking about how great it would be to remember your entire life, right? To have a database of your entire life. If you want a second opinion, go to read this beautiful story by Ted Chiang that imagines a system like this and some of the interesting pitfalls. Okay, so now I'm going to talk very quickly about some of the technical challenges that we need to overcome in order to make this a reality. Okay, now I'm talking about technical challenges having to do with a certain kind of database, which is a database of the episodes of your life. Okay, but this is just because I'm very passionate about this. The kind of challenges are actually common to many more data sets. Okay, so if you imagine a person's medical records or the history of a corporation or any entity, okay, all of these things are sort of combinations of episodes that happened in time, and every episode has some structured data, but mostly unstructured data coming from all kinds of sources. So how can we deal with these how can you deal with these collections of data, I think is an interesting research challenge for the database guy at least. Okay, so the first challenge is how are we going to build this database? Okay, now as a database guy, right? If I were an old world database guy, I would come and say, well, let's design a schema of all of your life with all the possible attributes. Yeah, we'll have 5,000 attributes, and we'll record everything. But that's that's not going to work, because if you try to impose too much structure, you can't anticipate everything that's going to happen in life. Okay, so what we did was we went the minimal way. Your database is a database of episodes, stuff that happened. You bought a book, you went for a run, you had a dinner, you traveled to Korea. I don't know, whatever you did. Okay, that's an episode. Episodes can have sub-episodes. Well, during my travel to Korea, I took a plane, I went to the hotel, I had some kimchi, I had kimchi, whatever. Okay, so sub-episodes can be important as well. So every episode just has a start time and an end time. Okay, and it's got a location, maybe a start location and end location. That's all. That's the only structure that we require. Okay, everything else can be either text, it can be structured data, it can be a video, it can be a photo, it can be any subset of that. Okay, so that's from a database perspective. You have a database of episodes ordered on a timeline, and at every episode you have stuff. Okay, that's all. Now, what's really important here is that you're fusing together signals from multiple inputs. Okay, so if I travel to Korea, right? So I'm getting on a plane and I'm in Korea. I'm navigating to a bunch of restaurants. I'm taking photos of stuff. I'm paying, in Korean restaurants, right? And so you can fuse the fact that I'm actually visiting Korea, right? But when I get back to San Francisco, I don't stand there at the gate taking a photo saying, "Hey, I'm back in San Francisco." No, I'm chilling now. I'm just going home. The way that you will know that I finished my trip is that I will, I don't know, go buy tomatoes the next day or go for a run in my neighborhood. So fusing information is critical in order to understand the entire picture of what's going on. Okay, so but here's the problem, right? A lot of the data that you have, all these digital breadcrumbs, they're very low level, right? So if I'm going around Seoul and taking photos, that's the data that you have. You have a photo here, a photo there, maybe a credit card receipt here, and whatever over there, right? But how do you take from that and make something meaningful? The fact that I went to Korea for 5 days and I had dinner at these restaurants and visited these sites and did all these things. So you want a higher level description of what you did. And so that's still an open problem, right? How do you take this raw data and try to figure out, okay, this is really what happened here. Okay, so travel is a simple example, and I actually built a hack for that in our original system. But what if it's like a month-long planning of a birthday party for somebody you love, right? And you call friends and you bought the food and you ordered it, whatever, you figured out a place and all these things, right? They're all part of a plan for a birthday party. How do you piece all these things together to understand the big picture? I'm going to skip this part. Okay, so that was the first challenge. How do we collect all this information and make it meaningful so you actually get episodes that you feel like you're understanding something? Okay, the second challenge is, right, I'm a database guy. So the second challenge is, how do you query all this data? And here there's a fundamental question, I think, that is of great concern to people who are working on data processing systems, which is, you can put it simply, are LLMs going to eat our lunch, or do we still need databases to do what databases do, right? So let me give you an example. So this is an example of like stuff from a journal. Okay, so my mom came to visit in Seattle. We did all these things, and now my question is, where did I take my mom when she was in Seattle? Okay. If you feed this data to an LLM, even 2 years ago, the LLM would tell you exactly what you did with your mom. Okay, it would know that the stock market crash was not relevant. She didn't do it. Okay, You know that if you took her to the airport on April 23rd, and then you went somewhere on April 24th, that was without mom. So the LLMs actually understand text at this level and can tell you what you did. The problem is your life is very long and very rich, and so what you need is you need to give the LLM exactly this data in order for it to do all the reasoning. But how do you select from the vast collection of data that you have about your life what to give to the LLM in order to answer your question? That's where the challenge is. But fundamentally, the LLMs can actually take data that we never knew how to manage, in this case text data, and give us answers to queries that, at least when I started my career, I never dreamt that AI would be able to answer. Okay, this is phenomenal. Okay, but here's where they fail. So suppose I in my career I visited Japan many times. Okay, so I have a lot of photos from Japan. I'll have a lot of episodes from Japan, and I just want to know how many times have I been to Japan. Okay, so in order to do this, you have to sort of go through my life. You have to figure out that in 1991 I went for the first time. In 2024 I went 3 times, and go through every year. And then you have to take, you have to count. You have to add. You have to union everything and aggregate and figure out the number of times I've been to Japan. That kind of operation is stuff that LLMs are just not very good at. Okay, and I think there's an open question right now, which is, will they be good at this ever? Okay, and with all due respect to my visit to Japan, that's not a lot of data. You can still put it into growing context windows. But if you're talking about much larger collections of data, you're not going to be able to stick them into context windows. Okay, so you need to think of ways where the LLM and the sort of the bread and butter of database systems can work together. And what databases do really well that LLMs don't is what's called set-based operators, right? It's basically the ability to do joins and unions and selections on sets. Okay, and hold it, I'm going to go back here. So it could be the case, and I'm changing my tune a little bit. Okay, LLMs are starting to creep me out. Okay, and it's time to do things that 2 years ago I was like, no, they're not going to do it. Okay, so it could be that LLMs could be like, they will understand enough of the steps that they need to do in order to solve your problem, but then to execute the steps, they will just like call a database or call something else. Okay, so they might be able to start doing the planning to answer a query, even though they're not doing the entire answer to the queries. Okay, I don't think you're ever going to get a situation where you'll take a petabyte of data and just stuff it into an LLM and say, give me something. Right? That's not critical. That's not practical. But LLMs might know enough about manipulating and querying structured data that you'll be able to get a pretty magical experience. But talk to me again. I'll come to Paris in 2 years, whatever. We'll see how this works. Okay. We actually tried to do something like this called neural databases a couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago at Meta, where the idea was the LLMs are so good at extracting data answers from any kind of data, right? So let's take the nice part, the amazing parts of LLMs, which is the ability to get into any kind of data. But once they got the data out of the raw content, let's translate it back to set-based operations that database systems know how to do. So let's get the best of both worlds. And I think there's a better approach to this today that is that actually a bunch of companies are rushing to implement based on extending SQL with the ability to call LLMs. But we don't have time to get into that. Okay, how much time do I have? 5 minutes. I'm going to slow down. So here's another problem that I think is going to be interesting to look at in the next coming while, which is if I'm going to talk to an AI for my entire life, it's not my life is not going to fit into a context window. Okay, I'm going to be having this very long-winded conversation with an AI, right? And it can save some context, but at some point it needs to take stuff out of the context and put it into some sort of permanent memory and be able to retrieve it at the right time. So how do we essentially provide AI a long-term memory? And actually, there's this work from Berkeley called MEMGPT, okay, which is inspired by virtual memory, right? The idea of virtual memory, right? Where virtual memory is like, you can think of it as main memory, but under the hood, it's going in and out of disk, right? And the idea there is that you have your context, your LLM context, right? The context window, but you have this other process that is essentially managing that context, right? It's you're saying something, and it's like, okay, I want to remember this fact, right? So I'm going to put this in a permanent memory, and now before I ask the next question, I'm going to say, okay, maybe there's stuff from the permanent memory that I need to bring in order to answer this question. So this context becomes something that is being managed by a much smarter system than you, well, and you as the ability to manage context. But it's bringing stuff in all the time, and this is all transparent to you. I think this kind of system where you're actively managing this context with data that is outside, and this is far more interesting than just RAG, right? RAG just goes, brings stuff in and helps you. But here you also need to decide what to save in external memory and bring relevant stuff back in. And this is, I think this is going to be a really exciting direction to work on. Okay, so in conclusion, okay, so the idea of having a personal AI, a personal system, personal computer as a system, started in, as far as you know, 1945 by Vannevar Bush, who after World War II was looking for ways to inspire the community to work on stuff other than technology for war. Okay, he was an MIT dean and then worked at DARPA. And so he managed a system called Mimics. Remember everything that you did, and you know, and give you all the answers all the time. The guy didn't even have a computer. Okay, I was like, 1945. He's like, computers didn't fit on desks. Okay, Gordon Bell and many projects that were inspired by that tried to do this. And what's happening here is that technology is getting better, right? More and more of our life is becoming digital, right? And so this should happen. Okay, AI is getting better. There's more data about you. It doesn't make sense for us not to try to do this. Now, you could argue, well, corporations don't want to do this. They all want to save their own private islands of data, keep moats around and stuff like that. I work for a company right now that I thought I shouldn't speak about this, but I think all these companies are ultimately going to want to do what's good for the users, right? So if the users demand this and there's value in this for the users, the companies will follow. So, you know, well-being is a really important problem. We're facing many issues in society today, and if AI can help every individual and our societies, then the world will be a better place. Now, I know you didn't ask me for this, but I'd like to give a bunch of book recommendations of books that I read somewhat recently that I like to share. The two on the left are fiction. Actually, the first one is not new at all. Lessons of Chemistry I read a few months ago. There's also a TV series based on it. Beautiful book, has very little to do with chemistry. These two are more like self-improvement books. If you're getting to the age of 40 and wondering about life, the book by Arthur Brooks, From Strength to Strength, is a must read. If you want to communicate better in various ways, this book was actually written by a neighbor of mine. And you know, I've been giving many talks over many years, but reading this book, I actually enjoyed it, and I recommend it to anybody of any age. So, unsolicited, enjoy at your own expense. Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
You have the model of primitive needs, the pretty one at the start, but don't you think there's some kind of value to, I mean, in some ways, the weights that you have when you're thinking about this? then you kind of prioritize the lower levels of the pyramid, you subtract from the meaning you have when you're thinking about, I don't know, the projects that you have, the also part of like the daily content stuff and trying to avoid that it also adds some kind of like adds a meaning to your life. I understand this sounds a bit Luddite, but do you think there's like some kind of conflict there if you ever manage to actually implement
Yeah.
AI systems like this?
So you're saying if an AI takes care of everything for me, will we lose the essence of being human?
No, but you had your example of Jimmy Carter, and I'm not sure that Jimmy Carter felt, I don't know, fulfilled, if that was his personal life as well. Like in the professional sense, he felt fulfilled because he's reaching this end goal of being president. But in your personal life, the end goal is more muddled. And so if you take away from all the daily distractions, I don't know, I'm not sure what's left.
I guess it depends on what the distractions are. Okay, and that's what I'm trying to get to. So if the distractions are, I'm trying to figure out whether I should go to the supermarket on my way to work tomorrow and what I should buy while I'm trying to have a conversation with my wife. That seems like a trade-off that I should help them with, right? If it's me and my wife trying to figure out which restaurant in Paris to go to, and that conversation will reveal all kinds of things about each other, then the AI should not like give us an answer. Right? So I'm not advocating, I'm actually advocating that the AI should sometimes tell you, leave me behind and go walk in nature and leave me, so I want to preserve what's awesome about being human, including the sucky part. Okay? So sometimes life has to stop. So, okay, I know this sounds like bad news, right? But I think there's a lot of friction that we have today that really AI can take care of. That's what I'm trying to get at. That
What's the metric by which you draw the line?
is very personal, right? And sometimes I'm going, my wife and I are going to want to get an immediate recommendation for restaurants, so just take care of that and go make the reservation in order to Uber and get us there. And sometimes we're going to want to sit for now and talk about it. So you can't even come up with hard and fast rules for that you always want to apply. It's always going to be in the moment. And the challenge of building this AI will be understanding what are your needs right now. It's very nuanced. It's not. I'm not suggesting anything simple-minded. Okay.
There was another question there. Yeah.
Yeah, I have very good questions. The first one is in terms of security. Could you imagine if your personal system is hacked by someone, and for example, you based on restaurants and you have the wrong recommendation and you are allergic to peanuts and right because of this wrong recommendation. And there is some question is in terms of the
That's not that. You're saying somebody wants to kill you, they're going to recommend that you have something with peanuts. Okay.
Yeah, and the second question is what we do the cost of this time if everyone in hurt by the personal existence.
Okay, so I don't want to run the numbers here, but I think I don't think the cost of the stories are that big, right? So the media that you have today that takes most of the stories is your photos and videos, right? Any text that you write, if you sit and write text from now until you're 85, you're not going to write enough text to make a dent in that, right? So I don't think the cost of storage are going to be that high. So that's one thing. Your question about hacking, so if somebody, so first of all, your personal timeline is private, okay? So nobody should be able to hack it. But obviously, security and hacking is a constant battle between bad actors and let me put it this way. If somebody really wants to kill you, it should be easy, it will always be easier to get by without an issue, okay? I don't think that going through the LLM route is gonna be, easy, okay? Now, one other thought, which is, even these agents, right, what they do today is, they don't just, and sometimes they just give you an answer, but you can also, ask them to critique each other. Okay, and critique themselves. You can say, here's my recommendation, but now you can say, hold it, I critique this based on my personal knowledge, right? And so it's like, well, no, now I see peanuts in the solution, you are allergic to peanuts, you can't do this. So you're not just gonna get a recommendation, you're gonna get a recommendation that has been critiqued by 10 other critiques. Critics, okay? Before, now you can say, well, I'll hack the critics too, and the critics say, no, they're opinion. But again, it's gonna be easier to keep doing it. But again, I don't.
Okay, so.
Yeah. Yes, just a question about if this sort of software are free, okay, but there is some people say when the project is free, you are the project. And so maybe, for example, you can think about the alteration, for example, the shows of the restaurant. For example, Google or other company that say the restaurant paid Google, for example, for just this one. So there is maybe somewhat some question about that, but if you let the eye choose your life, and we are lazy, so maybe for many different things we choose to add our history to the eye.
Yeah.
The problem, and sometimes when you go out of your comfort zone, you need to go out of your comfort zone sometimes. Maybe I don't know how sort of things. For example, it is the case for them with the version of people who we are here in Europe, in the States, at least it's a different version of China. So, you know, where there is some integration. So I wonder.
Yeah. No, you're asking, it's not a philosophical question, it's a business model question. It's a very, very solid question. So the question, right, the thing is, right, if you're not paying for this, somebody else is. The business model is if you're not paying, somebody needs to make money by giving you essentially ads. Okay. Now, today on social media, each one has their own taste. I don't care about the ads because I don't notice them anymore. That is, if you look in my house, you'll find a bunch of things that were advertised on Instagram, and I didn't really need them, and now they're in my house. Okay, but I'm happy. So then the question is, will you pay for this thing? So if you pay money for this thing, right, then you can get recommendations that are only on good for you. Okay, so the question is how to find the balance between affordability and control. I think that if it's good enough, you will pay for it. Okay, so if there's a service, okay, if today you had, actually let's go simpler. Okay, I don't know. Today you pay. How many people here pay for AI services? Okay, what do you mean by that? You pay for ChatGPT. Okay. So you pay for ChatGPT. 3 years ago, you would not imagine that you need to pay for AI. Right? Because now you realize that if you don't pay for AI, just like if 20 years ago, if you didn't pay, if you didn't pay for a mobile right internet, right? So you start realizing that these things are like, if you don't have them, you're behind. And so if this thing is really good, and again, we're not close to getting there. Actually, I don't know how close we are to getting there. I don't want to make predictions about the future. But if you now have this thing, right? If you can pay the same that you pay for ChatGPT, okay? But now you have this awesome assistant in your pocket. You can be Jimmy Carter, okay? Then you're going to pay for it. Because if you're not, then you're not going to be able to, it's not just compete with others. You're just going to have a life that is not as good as it can be. So there is an argument. What I'm trying to say is there is an argument where you're going to pay for this, and maybe it'll be a small add-on on ChatGPT. I don't know, right? $5 and you get $5 more and you get this. But there are always going to be people who can't afford it, and then you need to come up with models where they, even when the AI gives you the recommendations, it's still up to you to take them, right? So even today, right, the recommendations that you get on social media, they're still trying to give you recommendations that you will like, right? Because otherwise they're wasting their time. Where the problem is that they're trying to get you to stay on the platform for longer, right? So if I can get you to stay on Facebook for 5 more minutes, I'm going to give you whatever more ads, and then Facebook is going to make more money. So it's more time spent rather than the quality. They're trying to get you really quality ads, right? Because sometimes they're judged by the conversions, right? But it's the fact that they're not going to respect your time. They're going to try to leave you. They're trying to get you to stay on the platform for longer. That's where it gets to be a problem. But we'll see. I mean, 3 years ago, if I told you you'd pay for AI, you'd think I'm crazy.
It was extremely interesting. My first idea was that it is a beautiful description of what hell maybe. And
Somebody needs to describe hell beautifully.
and two critical points. It's how to make people smarter and how to develop critical thinking that has to be associated with this kind of application. Otherwise, it will be self-reinforcement of what we feel may be useful for, and we may avoid as much as possible to feel pain or something like that. Or as a biologist, I can tell that stress is extremely important. It's even critical for some at some steps of the human development, from the fetus to the adult. The biological stress, I mean, psychological stress, maybe also, but I don't. And all the system tries to minimize stress by reinforcing well-being. And it seems to me that it may be quite dangerous.
So you know much more about this than I do, but there's got to be good stress and bad stress, right? So if I'm stressed about whether I'm going to catch the metro to go to get home on time, I'm guessing that's bad stress, especially if it comes in at the cost of not paying attention to a lecture.
Help you rushing, get the metro not too late.
That's fine. So if the system tells me you've got 3 minutes to get there and go, okay. And furthermore, I know that usually you get there in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. I'm good, right? So I'm not trying. My description of hell was not colorful enough, but I'm not trying to reduce. I'm not trying to reduce our lives into these paths of least resistance where everything is taken care of. That's not my goal. Okay, believe me. If there's anything I learned in life, it's I learned from the crappy moments. Okay, so crap will be there, but there are things that you do in life that are actually waste of time. That a system should be able to do this. You're walking around, I don't know, a foreign city, and you need lunch right now. you just want to go there. You don't want to have to get, walk around the block for 45 minutes until you're really hungry and then go into McDonald's, right? It's like, there are things where the quality of our life can be substantially improved. There are, when you're dealing with relationships, like some system that scans all of your close loved ones and not scans them personally, right? Tries to think about whether there's something today that they may need from you, that you can help them with, and tell you that in the beginning of the day. That's not a bad thing. Or a system that reads the news in the morning before you go to work, and that, and the system realizes that news might affect certain people that you work with closely. So then you can empathize with them. You can spend a moment to see whether they're okay. Those are things that we just don't have time to do, right? But if we can do this, if a system can help us do this, right, then we can bring more good to the world. That doesn't mean, we're reducing crap. We're just increasing good. But the main point I want you to take away from this is the system will be what we build them to be. So don't take anything I said or what you think I may have said as a given. Right? Okay, so we need to design them in such a way that they will preserve the essence, the good and bad of being human, but take away stuff that I'm totally with you. I'm just like, these things haven't been built yet.
So let's stay with this upbeat point. Let's take the speaker again.
Yes.
So this brings us to the end of the day. Thanks all for being here. I hope that you learned a lot, not just today, but during all this past year that we've been running. And I do hope that we find new ways of collaborating all this exciting field of data science and data. So thanks a lot. Unexpected. It's So are you really working in the actual system? Apart from the
Yeah, I'm trying to build this thing.